right. So if you would, I guess, introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Ty Donaldson. I am a co-founder, co-owner of Maven Makers.
All right. And how many members does the space have as of now?
I'd say active 25 to 30. Since we started in August of 2015, we've had close to 200. So it's just a revolving door of people in and out. So 25 to 30 right now.
All right. And is your space? What kind of access do members get to your space? Is it a 24-hour access or certain hours per day, certain days per week?
Our space has the hours of operation from Monday through Saturday, 9 to 9 is the general hours of operation. But more specifically, the members themselves have 12 to 9 Monday through Friday and 9 to 9 on Saturday. But if you are a studio space member where you have your own space, you have the benefit of coming in from 9 to 12 before the rest of the membership has the ability to be here. And then Saturday is a all day for everybody. And so that means we're just closed on Sundays, not 24 hours. We've toyed around with the idea and may move towards the idea of giving those people with studio spaces a broader access into essentially like a 24-hour type access, because they have all their tools here. They have some of them their livelihoods that pays their bills here. So how does that work within their schedules when they might need to be working at different times and Maven Makers is open? So trying to figure out what that dynamic looks like could be different, but right now it's just those set hours of operation.
All right. And what's membership? Are there tiers? What's the cost levels? If somebody were to come in and want to do it for a month, is that possible? Do you have day passes or weekends only kind of setup? What kind of?
The way our membership is set up, it is when you come in the doors, you have to go through training. Since we're predominantly a woodworking facility, we want to make sure everyone goes through training. In order to go through training, you also have to first be a member. So that first month is going to be your biggest chunk of change that you have to pay. So it's $85 a month for membership, and it's $75 for training. So that first month you're paying $160. After that, you're paying $85 a month. It's an automatic payment on their membership, but the members have direct access through our website, through the system we use, which is called Pike 13. That gives them access to their account. If they want to end their account, they can end their account. If they want to change the way their account's set up, they can do that. The other ways they can change that are they can pay for 6 months and they get a month free. So they're really paying for 5 months. They can pay for a year or they get 2 months free, so they're really paying for 10 months. Or they can pay for a day pass. So the day pass goes towards those weekend warriors who just want to come in on a weekend, or for those who just have a quick project they want to work on. But everybody out of the gates has to pay for a month and has to pay for training, essentially because training is going to take a week, and you might not be able to finish what you're working on because you'll be working on a cutting board and a push stick in the training, and you might want to come back and do more to your cutting board afterwards. So it gives you the ability to come in and also to kind of test drive the space within that month. And then from there, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a month? You want to do 6 months? You want to do a year? You just want to come in and pay as you go with the day pass. So the way the day pass structure is it's $25 a day. So obviously, if I'm doing anything more than 3 sessions in a month, it doesn't make sense for me to pay for a day pass. But if I'm doing more than 3 days a month, then I'm essentially saving money by paying for the whole month. So it just depends on the need. But some people come in and say, hey, I just need to use your planer for the day. Some people say that and they're not actually members. So if they really only need to use the planer, we also have an express pass. So that's $35. I'm going to train you how to use just the planer, and you can use just the planer for the day. You're paying an extra $10 for me to train you for that one piece of equipment. And then you can't use anything else in the shop because you haven't been trained how to use that one piece of equipment, any other piece of equipment. So with that, we've seen the need and hopefully addressed the whole possibilities of why someone might come into the space to use the space. Now, that is largely in mind of using the woodworking facility. As you saw, we also have 3D printing, we have laser cutting, we have soldering irons, and 3D modeling. Those are things that we have, and it's a benefit to our members. If you wanted to be a member, that is fine, but since from our beginnings we've mostly been a woodworking shop, our membership isn't tailored towards just doing the digital kind of thing. In time that will change, but right now it's not the case. So that's the way our memberships are laid out.
And could you cover a little more about your training for using this space and the equipment?
Sure. So training, actually we'll do it this week. It's every other week. Tuesday and Thursday. It's from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. And that is going to be first day, Tuesday. You're going to come in, use everything you need to make a cutting board. The next day, on Thursday, you're going to come in, finish up the cutting board to make an edge grain or side grain cutting board, and also make a push stick. So within those 2 days, you're going to touch everything as far as big equipment in the shop. Learn how to use it. We're not just saying, here's a table saw, here's how you raise a blade, here's how you lower the blade. We're actually saying, here's how you do that and what you're doing. We're going to make something and giving practical application of that. So taking a raw cut piece of maple usually and turning that into a cutting board. So it's still got the saw blade marks on it. And you're going to turn that into dimensional lumber that you can turn into a project. Trying to give the value of why you'd be buying rough sawn lumber. It's cheaper. Also, usually it's not straight. So we've got to figure out how to make that straight before it's usable for us or to be used on the equipment, depending on what piece of equipment it is. So helping people think through that process. Not doing that makes this equipment useless. If they don't know how to use it and the practical applications of how to use it, what good is this equipment? What good is our space? And what good is the membership to them? So that's why you have to be a member and have to go through this training to then hopefully to ask the question, well, what now? What's next? And so with that, what's next, we've began developing what's next courses. So people come in and say, oh, okay, I want to make something else, but I don't even know where to start. Like, I would like to make a birdhouse one day, but I don't even know how to make a true miter cut. Like, you taught me how to use a miter saw, but we just cut things down, but we haven't talked about mitering and framing and how do I do that? So like right now we're putting forward a mid-century modern or ode to a mid-century modern style end table, and people will come in and they'll learn how to make miter cuts. They'll learn how to laminate wood together, how to put those pieces together, how to make all that make sense into a central product, a central idea. How do we turn that into something that makes sense? And then, just like a cutting board, now because I made a cutting board, I can make a top for a table. But I might not know how to do the miters that I need to do to make this end table. But now we're putting that lamination process of making a cutting board and the miters together, that now you've created at least two, if not many more, possibilities of products that you can make. So that's what these What's Next classes are doing. And that's just kind of a niche. We're talking about just the membership, but then there's also classes that need to be happening outside of the membership themselves, the public coming in. One, it helps them see we have a space, but it also helps them meet that need of, I want to have a night to hang out with my spouse or friend or partner or whatever it is, to come and make something. So trying to answer that question, how can I do that? And what could I be doing? How long is that going to take? Trying to offer classes that are short, like one night, or these What's Next classes that are, or courses that are going to be about 8 weeks of intentional training where they're not just learning how to use the equipment, but they're also getting into our digital lab, getting in the computers, learning how to make this end table on 3D modeling software, learning how to print the drawings out to go then to the wood shop and figure out, okay, I've already made it digitally. I've already kind of made my prototype. That saved a lot of money. Great. I don't have to waste a lot of wood. Now, how do I actually make a real prototype based off of the drawings that I've made? So I print out those drawings and then go through the training of taking those drawings and turning them into a workable prototype. And then from there, if they want to buy some exotic wood and make it look like a true mid-century modern like teak piece, then they can do that. But it's learning the process. You don't just jump in and voila, I have a really nice conference room table that I've conjured up. No, you have to go through the process. It's a iterative design process, and we're trying to help people understand that. So then you also have stuff like this. So this is a year of making. Obviously, it just kicked off in the last month because this is January, but we're, as it says, ages 7 to 11, and this is for the younger demographic. So giving people access to some of those things we've already talked about, or all those things we already talked about. We're not going to let them come in and work on the heavy machinery. That's not a good idea for a 7 to 11-year-old. We're going to let them come in, do 3D modeling, 3D printing, understand the iterative design process in a different way, in a way that they can approach little bits, stuff like that. So doing program, curriculum, building that they have access to. That's for, as you see there, after school programs, but also working with homeschool programs. And as I've already talked about in the tour, working with in the mornings special needs kids to come in that are on the autistic spectrum, to give them the access to a space that otherwise they wouldn't have access to, give them skill sets that would otherwise not be able to build, and hopefully give them jobs that they otherwise would not be able to have. And that's the goal. And that's been our catchphrase, our purpose from the beginning is economic development through non-traditional education. That is not just education, that's a very wide thing. It's a non-traditional way to education because you're not paying for university, you're not paying for all these other classes, you're just paying for an individual class, an individual skill set, an individual space and membership to have access to, so you can build and grow and figure out, is this something that you want to do? We have members that are in the space that are doing similar to what we just discussed, where they're just coming in and I need to make some money, I'm going to make a table and I'm going to try to sell it. Okay, you can do that. It's probably not the best idea. There's some learning involved. Like there's another guy that's making tables here in the space that's been doing it for 4 years and is still trying to figure out how to do it well. It takes time, but being around and surrounded by other people that are doing similar things is a great benefit, and that's what collaborative community is all about. And that is what our name is about. Maven Makers is expert makers. We're making connoisseurs of knowledge, intellectual knowledge brokers that are willing to share that knowledge with others and not wanting to take anything in return. Just because like the folks who are building lighting here in the space, they come here, they've been in the space for a while. There's a guy that was starting out as a mechanical engineer years ago, became a lawyer, and now is retired and likes to tinker. Saw them trying to bend some brass rod for their lighting fixtures and was like, hey, would y'all like some help with that? It looks like you're struggling. And because of that, they've been able to change the way that they're doing their production for their lighting and been able to actually do the things that they prototyped and tried to make and are able to replicate that. Just because there's commonality, because there's other people that have similar mindsets. There are other collaborative spaces around town, but the question I would wonder is, are they truly collaborative? If there's a lawyer next to a photographer, next to an architect, those are all things that they can use collectively to make value added for all of them. But are they truly collaborating? Do they have commonality enough to collaborate? And since we built these studios in our space, it changes the mindset of, okay, this guy, even though he does everything by hand, and I use power tools, he has an understanding of certain things that I would never understand. And then, like I already explained with the folks with the lighting fixtures, there are conversations, there are things that happen that you can't plan for, but if you create the environment, it can happen, and it will happen. And that's the kind of economic development that we're trying to go for, and it's a non-traditional way of going about it.
Okay, so talking about a little bit about how you founded the space and what it takes to keep it running, if you can.
I definitely can. It's all about, like, the question often asked is what caused you to make this space? As I said, I'm a co-founder and co-owner. My business partner is an educator, and I'm a designer. Putting those two roads together, I needed a space to design things and to prototype things and to make things happen that, strangely enough, in Savannah there isn't. There's plenty of creatives that come in and out of this town, but they don't stay because there's nowhere to retain them. So for me, I needed a place to be retained. I needed a place to also help others to be retained. And my business partner, being an educator, he saw education is expensive. He teaches manufacturing, engineering, robotics. How do we kind of put our heads together? And he saw this model of a makerspace. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew I needed it. And so I said, well, let's make that happen, because if I don't have that, I can't survive as far as what I do here in Savannah. So that's what started and instigated making the space happen. And that was only the beginning of the learning of how to make this thing happen.
And were there any particularly large hurdles that took a lot of working to get through? Things to let other people know to watch out for if they're looking to do something similar? I would say, well, as I've already stated, having studio spaces was a aha moment for us. We started doing that a year ago. If we had started doing that the year and a half prior, that would have been very helpful. Financially, it would have been helpful for that collaborative community. But the reality is, you're in a catch-22 because no one knows who you are. You're trying to start a space, and if you try to designate space for a studio space, but no one knows that you're there, then are you wasting square footage that you need to be paying for that you could be using doing something else with that square footage? So there's a little bit of a catch-22, or a lot of a catch-22 when you're building a space like this. What do you do first? What we did first was go out to the community, do classes, do workshops, and try to do a different style class, whether it's woodworking, electronics, you name it, in the community, go to different areas and market it to different people each time. Which, even with that, that's a lot of variables. If we market a woodworking class to the east side of town, but then do an electronics class to the south side of town, well, what if we would have done an electronics class on the east side of town and a woodworking class on the south side of town? It might take doing a lot of that preliminary research. That is also still having fun, building community, because in that we also did classes with nonprofit organizations. We said, knocked on their door, what do you need to make? And okay, let's build a community class around that. Let's build newspaper racks for magazine stands and newspapers. Let's build a workbench for bikes for a bicycle campaign. Let's get reclaimed lumber from a local reclaiming initiative and let people understand what they're doing, but in the process let them see what we're doing. Do a electronics class around
and next to a new business that's trying to get off the ground that's doing electronics, and have those connections in the community. And as you build that, their marketing helps your marketing and vice versa. And then you also build a repertoire of what people might want. And then you have an idea. That's what I need to put in the space. But also it's a lot cheaper to put in a woodworking facility than a metalworking facility. So what can you pay for? How much money do you have? How much does it cost in a given community? Our square footage cost is going to be different from Philadelphia's square footage cost. And what we can do with that square footage within the close proximity of actually being in downtown is going to be different than maybe in a different area in another city. Savannah doesn't go up, it just goes out, and there's not a lot of room. Where do you have room? So thinking through these questions is one of the hardest things in starting, but then those questions don't end when you have a space. It's the same questions when you're in the space with those studio questions, like we need studios, where we're going to put them, and how are we going to pay for the extra square footage, and what's the cost that we're going to associate with them based off of the cost that our square footage is. You don't want to gouge your clients. So one of the biggest questions are, what are the supplementary and auxiliary revenue streams that help pay for this space? Membership alone cannot pay for a space. Studio space is a supplement that helps pay for that square footage that those people are occupying. But what about the excess capacity that you have within the wood shop that, like right now, people aren't in right now? But in an hour, we might have 4 people in here using it all at the same time. Or we could have up to 6 to 10. You don't know. But what can we do to produce, make that excess capacity turn into a revenue stream that helps pay for the space? All of it, the end goal is to give people a place to come and to collaborate and to grow and to be economic drivers for the city and for themselves. So you don't want to ask your membership to pay everything. You need to figure out what your community wants that can help supplement what you need to do to help your membership get there. But every space is different. We are a for-profit model. Not saying we're actually for-profit at the moment, but we are for-profit in the sense that we are an LLC. We're not a 501c3 like almost every other makerspace is. And we've done that intentionally to figure out who are the nonprofits in the area that are already doing things that we can help. Whether it's progressive ability, I forget what it's called, but it's disabilities, working with students with disabilities like we're doing, or folks that are in a similar way but working with inner city kids or at-risk youth. They're already doing it. Why would we reinvent the wheel? Let's figure out how we can work with them. And if and when we find that there's a hole, there's a missing link, we will fill it with a nonprofit. But why don't we create our own nonprofit that is stepping on the toes of people that are already doing great things? Let's work with those people. Let's work with those organizations and figure out what hole we need to fill within our community. Otherwise, you're not collaborating with the community. You're trying to create your own system within the community when that's not the point of collaboration. It could take 10 years. It could take 5. We could figure out in the next 6 months. We're getting close to a lot of ways that we can do that with organizations we're working with. But it takes time because we can't focus on those nonprofit things while we're also underwater as far as trying to keep the business going. The question then is, well, can you just use federal and other government funding to pay for the space as a whole? Yes, but again, that's not our take on it, which we understand is different than most. But so far, it's made sense for us, and We're still paying attention as you're going out making videos. What are people doing? We know we're not perfect, and I don't think any of us doing this whole makerspace thing thinks we're perfect. And especially as we've seen in the last few months with Tech Shop, who everyone has been looking at as the model to potentially follow, still wondering in the back of their mind, how in the world are they staying afloat? Realizing, oh, they went bankrupt. Still trying to learn from them. And in the same way, trying to learn from other spaces that we're all doing this together differently because our communities are different, their needs are different. One of the other auxiliary supplementary streams to help keep the makerspace afloat that we have found in the last few months just happened upon, and I'm sure other spaces have the same thing. And it's one of those things that we probably should have seen other spaces were doing it. We might be doing it differently, but people come to us and say, hey, can you make this for me? And our first reaction has always been, well, no, our whole point is to help you learn how to make this. But finally realized if they're asking that question, they probably don't want to make this themselves, and they probably don't really care, even though we think they have the potential and the ability to do that. So what we say is, well, yes, of course we'll make that for you, and giving our members the ability to make $1 off of these opportunities. So we're creating contract workers within our membership. So there's buy-in. You're a member, you're a part of a group of people that has the ability to have opportunity to gain more revenue. Whether that's a hobbyist just wanting to come in on the evenings and now has the opportunity to make an extra couple $100 a month or more, depending on the job. But that is something that, again, we just kind of fell upon. And it's like, well, yeah, this is a great way for people to want to be a part of what we're doing, because why not? They get to be a part of a space that they're being offered job opportunities on top of what potentially they're already doing. So something really to be, I guess, in the best sense of the word, exploited within a space is that idea of excess capacity. You have space, you have stuff sitting around. If it's not being used, how can you use it to make more money to help your members continue to use the space? So always be thinking through, how can you utilize excess capacity and equipment and people, resources that are at your disposal.
Okay.
One of the one of the learning moments we've had in growing the makerspace is it's a logical cycle that I fell upon when I was reading a book about how to create a habit. And like, well, we want to try to help create habits for our members. Just like if you go to a gym, if the person, myself, I'm going to a gym, I need to create a habit. If I don't, then I'm not going to go back to the gym. I'm wasting my money. How do I do that? And you got to give them a reward, and then essentially, like with the class, give a class, there's a reward, and there's a cue. Because of that reward, I want to keep coming back and get another reward. And after a few of those cycles, you're starting to create a habit where they enjoy what they're doing, enjoy what they're making. So, okay, let's do classes, because that gets them in the space, gets them understanding what they can make in the space, gets them making things, and then the more we offer them, the more they want to come in and use the space. That makes sense. And then we've got them hooked. They love making things. That's great. That's the plan. But the reality is, it didn't come out that way. We put a lot of effort into classes. It takes like 40 hours to build a 2-hour course, doing the graphic design, the marketing, the course curriculum, the finding the educator, locking out the amount of time you need. Do you need to provide food and drinks and everything under the sun of what you need for a given class? And then nobody might show up or sign up. You can force them to pay up front, or force them to pay a portion up front, so at least you have some payback for all that time. But there's still no guarantee. It seemed like low-hanging fruit. It seemed like the best way to get them in the door and show them we have a space here, and wave your hands and say, we're here. We're here for you to use our membership and our equipment and our space for you. But it doesn't bring them in. And that's when we started doing the studio spaces, because it's a different draw. These are people that are already making things, that know how to make things. They just need the space to do them. And that's, again, like, it made sense. It's logical. And we're going back towards that now that we've instituted a good base of studio spaces of 10 spaces that are all rented out. But that idea of low-hanging fruit has changed at every angle, at every turn. When we try to decide what is the easiest thing to grab and keep moving, it's usually not as easy as we think. And that's one of the greatest realities of running a makerspace. Is this is a great idea. Every business, if you're running it, you have a dream, a great idea. It's not going to be easy, but it doesn't mean you have to stop. You just got to keep pivoting. What is really the low-hanging fruit? And for us, it seems having a collaborative community through that hub of a studio space that now I have the platform to build off of, to move forward, to create the time and the resources needed to build classes. Because before, we were using every resource we had, and we had nothing left at the end of the month. So what can you do to create resources? And those resources are, now we have a group of people that are willing to teach because they're here and they love making things, and we know who they are. Before, we didn't know who these people were that needed to teach a class. So it creates a community that you can tap into for design build stuff and for teaching classes.